So in today's video, we're going to expand upon the basics that we covered in the recent video about the new Elementor Pro Pop-Ups function. We're going to jump in and take a bit more of a deep dive into some of the cool things you can do, how we can trigger these, and all those kinds of cool things that makes this a fantastic addition to the latest version of Elementor Pro. Hi and welcome to WPTuts, the channel where I help you create beautiful WordPress websites. If this is your first time on the channel, please consider subscribing and smashing that bell icon below to be notified every time new content is added. Okay, so the new pop-up builder inside Elementor Pro brings with it a ton of really cool new features. And in this video, we're just going to deep dive into some of the things you can do. Now, don't think of pop-ups as just being something you use to promote a product or a service to your end user. There are a multitude of different ways you can use it. And in this video, I'm just going to demonstrate a couple. So with that in mind, let's just jump over into WordPress, open up the dashboard and start taking a look at some of the things we can do with this new pop-up builder with Elementor Pro. So we've gone ahead and jumped into the dashboard of WordPress, and we're now ready to take a look at creating our own pop-ups. Now you'll notice if you've installed the 2.4 update of Elementor and Elementor Pro that we now have some separation in Elementor and all the settings that go with it, and also the template section. So if you look on the left hand side, you can see we've now got a new entry for templates, and inside there we've got the pop-ups. So we're going to come down to pop-ups, click on that, and that's going to take us through to a familiar page where we create our first pop-up in the same way that we create our first templates. So what we're going to do is click on Add New Pop-Up. So again, this should all be pretty familiar to you. Pop-up is the type of template we're going to create, and we're just going to call this one Sample Pop-Up. Create our template. Once we've done that, we'll jump over then to choose from either the predefined templates, or we can go and create our own template, or one we've previously created. So you can see we've got all the various different things, and there are a ton of different types of pop-ups we can choose from. These are all pre-designed, and we could use these as the basis because they all use Elementor and Elementor Pro for the layout of all the different content. So if you want to, you can categorize these, and you can come in and search for things like fly-in, full screen, hollow bar, and so on. Anything then you like, you can favorite it if you want to by clicking on the little heart in the bottom right hand corner. You can click insert to insert this into the page, or you can go to my templates, choose any of the templates you previously saved yourself, or you can just simply come in, close this down and start from scratch. What we're going to do is we're going to come over to the pop-up section and we're going to choose something just to pull in and use the basis for our particular pop-up. So if we just take a look through, you can see there are a ton of really good looking, good starter points for anything we want to create. So let's just, for example, take a look at this one. So we'll just say insert this. This is then going to insert it into our design. It'll show us an example. You might find there's a little bit of preloading. Depends on the type of template that you're loading in. But once you've done that, you can see we now have a ton of options on the left-hand side for the pop-up settings. Now, if for any reason you take your focus off this and you go in to start editing the template, if you want to get back to those settings that are specific to the pop-ups, all you need to do is come down to the bottom left-hand corner, click on the little cog icon, which is the settings icon, click on there, and that'll take you back to the pop-up settings. There's one of those little things that's quite hidden away, and if you don't know where to look for it, you can very easily go around in circles for 5 minutes just trying to find how you get back to changing those settings. Okay, so we've covered some of the basics on how you actually go through and set things up on this particular settings section, and we'll come back in a bit later and we'll take a look at creating one from scratch. But for now, let's just use this as an example and we can see how this works with the page. So we'll say we're happy with the way this looks. We want to change the percentage to give someone a bigger percentage off. We'll say 50%. You can see everything edits in exactly the same way you'd expect with Elementor and Elementor Pro. So very, very easy to deal with. Now once we hit the publish option, that'll take us through to where we've got the real control of the pop-ups. Now this is something that really does help set apart Elementor Pro's pop-ups to a lot of the other pop-up builders out there. You can see we've got 3 different lots of options on the left-hand side. We've got conditions, triggers, and advanced rules. Now this works in a very similar fashion to setting up the conditions when you create page templates, section templates, and so on. Obviously, this is geared towards dealing with pop-ups. So if we come to the conditions, you can see we can add a condition. We can come to the triggers, and there's a range of different triggers we can use to actually trigger the pop-up displaying. And then finally, we have the advanced rules. So we come back to conditions, we can say, right, where do we want this pop-up to display? Click Add a Condition. You can see we can include or exclude anything we want. We can build up more complex conditions by adding additional condition stages. So we can create anything we want using conditional logic. You can see we've got entire site archives in singular. So we could say, well, we want to go to singular. You can see that now opens up another option. We can go and choose which type of singular, page, post, whatever we want to work with. So you can see we've got some real granular controls here. We can come down and choose the front page. We can choose posts, and we can then filter out what types of post or what post we want. So you can see we can go to all posts in a particular category, in a child category, using a tag, format, by a particular author, and so on. Same kind of thing then we can use for pages. We can also do this on media. We've also got some additional options now, things like direct child of, any child of, by author, and on the 404 page. Let's keep this really simple and say we want to put this on all posts. Click on that. You can see that now says all. If we wanted to, we could sort of go in here and start filtering through again. We could add another condition stage to that. So we say we're happy with that. If we click on next, that'll now take us through to the triggers section. The triggers is where we can go through and specify what is used to trigger this particular pop-up's display. As you can see, we've got 6 different options. We've got onload, scroll, scroll to element, and so on. We can enable and disable any of these by simply using the toggle on the right-hand side. So I click, you can see that now opens up on page load, and we can then say after X number of seconds, we can have this pop up. So it's a very simple condition. So we can set 30 seconds in there if we wanted to, and after 30 seconds, that pop-up would then display on that particular page that matches the condition we've set in the previous step. We can also do things like on scroll. So we can say, well, which direction do we want them to scroll in before this displays, and how far do we want them to scroll before it displays? So you can see we've got up and down, and then we've got a percentage value we can insert. So at the moment, this is saying that once they scroll down the page to 50% or more, this pop-up will then display from the left-hand side, providing it is a post. On a page or anything else won't be displayed. So you can see there are a ton of really cool options on there. So we'll just say we'll do this really simple, like we'll say on page load after 10 seconds. So there's the next thing. So we set the condition and now the trigger. Come to next, and you can see now this gives us the advanced rules. So this is where we can really get in and fine tune when this is displayed, how it's displayed, and so on. So if we wanted to limit this to only being displayed on a desktop, we could come down and say show on devices. We could say yes to that, and then we can disable anything we don't want it to show on. And obviously if you want to go back in, you can simply add in the extra different devices you want to show on. So now we could say this only displays on a desktop. So anyone using it on a mobile won't see this particular sort of pop-up. Now obviously you could use different triggers and you could use different pop-ups for different devices, but all saying and doing the same thing. So you could have one that's geared towards dealing with people on mobile devices, that's a more mobile friendly way of doing things, and a different one then for the desktop and the tablet. So you can really get in and fine tune who, what, where, when, why, all those kinds of cool things for when your pop-up is actually displayed. So the show on devices rule is a very, very simple rule, and we're not restricted to only using one rule. We can build up multiple different rules that all have to be adhered to before this pop-up will be displayed. So let's just say, for example, you wanted to hide this from particular logged in users. Well, we could do that by simply activating hide for logged in users. You can see we have the option for all users, which will target anybody that's logged in. However, you might want to restrict this to only particular classes of logged in users. So the custom option allows us to target any particular user group. So we click to expand, you can see all of our user groups you'd expect to see there. Plus, because I've got WooCommerce installed, we've also got the user group of customer and shop manager. So we can target everybody, or we could target specific user groups. Now, if you create your own custom user groups, then these will also display in here as well. So you get a really nice granular level of control to make sure only the people you want to see the actual pop-up will see it. So again, we can enable or disable these. We can say show when arriving from. So if we expand that out, you can see we've got some options in there: search engines, external links, internal links. Really quite useful features when arriving from a specific URL. So let's just say that you were doing some form of online marketing and you had a dedicated URL that sent them over to this particular page where this pop-up could potentially be seen. Now, providing that URL was where the visitor came from, they would see the pop-up, and as long as they sort of met any of the other criteria that we set in these advanced rules, it would be displayed to them. But anybody that comes from a different URL or actually just goes straight to that page won't see it. And again, we can use this, we can do show it, we can hide it, we can use regex. There's a ton of really cool functions. So this really does allow you to get really, really low level on how you want to control who and where this particular pop-up is going to be seen. So you can see that's very useful. We can say show up a number of times. So we can specify this will only be displayed for a certain number of times to anybody that views this before it will stop being displayed to that particular user. Again, we've also got the option then to show after X number of sessions. So let's just say, for example, you had a checkout page or you had a shop page and you've got a user that comes and visits it a couple of times, but after, say, 3 times, you want to sort of incentivize them to actually come onto this page and purchase the product, add it to their shopping cart. You could say, well, after 2, 3, 5, 10 sessions, whatever you want, when they land on this page or pages, this particular pop-up will then display to them. Great way of sort of tipping that potential buyer over the edge by offering them a nice little discount or something that incentivize or pushes them to actually buy it. Whereas if someone lands on that page once or twice and then they go to the shopping cart, well, they haven't seen that and you haven't then given them 20, 30, 50%, whatever you were kind of giving them as an incentive. So again, really good if you're using this for marketing purposes. We've also then got, finally, we've got the show after X page views. So we might say that someone has to go around 5 posts before they will actually see this particular pop-up. Well, you can do that by just specifying the number of page views that have to be sort of adhered to before that particular pop-up will then be displayed to that user. And again, you can build these conditions up. So we could say that if they do 3 page views, but they're on a mobile, they won't see this particular pop-up. But if they're on a desktop, they will, because both of those advanced rules would then be met. So once we've gone through and set all the different conditions we want, I'll just disable these because I'll keep this really simple for now. We say save and close. That will then save out and create our pop-up with the rules, triggers, and conditions that we've set up on there. So let's take a look at that in action to see how it works. Now the easiest way to do that is we're simply going to come over and click on the preview. We can click to preview this. That will then load us a page up. And as you can see, there's our pop-up coming in from the left hand side. And we want to close it down, we can simply click on the X to close that down. So very, very easy to do. So now that we've seen our pop-up in action, what if you want to change some of those triggers or you want to change the conditions? How can you do that? Well, it's really easy. Let's just jump back into the dashboard. What we're going to do is where we've got the update button, which you can see is currently ghosted out, we've got a little pop-up arrow to the right hand side, which is the options. We click and expand that out. You can see all the different options that we set up at the beginning, the conditions, the triggers, and the advanced rules are all available to us there. We can even save this as a template if we wanted to. So let's come back in, display conditions, and you can see all those options are back in there. We can now come in and change any of the triggers, any of the advanced rules, whatever we want to do, all go in there, and then we can hit save and close at the end of it. So that's the basics of how you create, how you set up those triggers and conditions and advanced rules for when you're creating a pop-up. Now let's take a look at actually creating some pop-ups and how we can use those in conjunction with our site to get some really useful use cases out of dealing with pop-ups. So now we've seen some of the basics, let's take a look at putting that into action somewhere where it could really count. Now, let's just say, for example, that we've got a shop and we want to sort of say, well, if someone lands on the cart page or the checkout page and they sort of stand there and they do nothing for a certain period of time, a little pop-up will pop up and offer them something to incentivize pushing them into actually making that purchase. Very, very easy to do. So first of all, let's actually create the pop-up. So again, we jumped into the templates at the pop-up section. We're going to add our new pop-up and we're going to call this one push to buy checkout. Whatever you want to call it, just so it makes sense to you. Create the template and we'll do the same as we did before for this example. We'll just take one of the predefined templates and we'll use that as an example. So we'll say we're going to use this one. It's nice and big and bold. We'll say insert that in, give it a chance to download all the assets, and there you go. There is our new pop-up all in action. Can't really fail to see that one. Okay, so we'll say that we're happy with the way that animates in and everything, and we'll come back and take a look at the options on the left-hand side a little bit later on. But for now, let's just take a look at how we set this up to do what we wanted to do. So let's click on Publish. The conditions we want it to meet. So the first thing we need to do is tell it which page we actually want this to display on. So it's very easy to do. Let's click on Add Our Condition. And because we've got WooCommerce installed, we can come in and choose that. So come in and say we want to use singular. For all singular, we're going to come in and we're going to choose what we want from there, which is all pages. And you can see that now opens up another option at the end. Now, this is a bit of a weird one. To me, I would have made more sense to have had something to do with WooCommerce and then show you the actual key pages inside WooCommerce. So this took a little bit of time to find. Once you know where to find it, it's not so bad. So you can see we've got all at the end. We don't want that. We want to put this into the basket page. So we'll search for that, and there's our basket. So we've said include singular all pages that are the basket page. We'll click on next. Then we can go through and say, well, what do we want it to do? What's the trigger we're going to use? Well, for this example, we're going to say after a certain period of inactivity. So click to expand that out. And for this example, we'll set this to a really short time for the demonstration. But obviously, you'd probably want to set it to longer. So say 30 seconds, 60 seconds or longer. If you wanted to set any advanced rules, then you could do that. So again, you could set things up like to say, only show this on certain devices, or if someone's not logged in, or if they arrive from a particular page, whatever you want to do. Then we'll say save and close. And there's our pop-up with all the conditions and everything completed. So let's take a look at this in action to see how it works. So jump to the test site now, and as you can see, I've got one item in my shopping basket. So if I went to any other page now other than the view basket page, then this pop-up wouldn't be triggered. And we have to meet that second criteria, which is to be inactive for 10 seconds. So let's just see that in action. So if I click to the shop page, we can see all the products. You can see I can wait here for 10 seconds and nothing will happen because it's not being told to show up on this particular page. So we can then carry on browsing as we normally expect to. Once we've added an item to our shopping basket, and we then say, let's view our basket, we'll click to go and view our basket, and there's the page as you'd expect it to be. Nothing particularly untoward there. Wait 10 seconds, and we'll see that our pop-up will then pop up on screen and show us that nice little enticing offer to say, well, come on, you really want to buy it? There's a discount code here. Let's get that discount code. Could be anything you want, but you can see it's very easy to do. So we now have that incentive that's set to trigger after a certain level of interactivity only on that specific page. So that's one really cool use case for dealing with these pop-ups. That's just one example. Let's take a look at another one. Now, the next type of pop-up we're going to create is something that you wouldn't necessarily associate with pop-ups, and this is quite cool. How about we create some form of content lock? Well, that's very easy to do. Let's create our new pop-up. Pop-up is fine. We're going to call this content lock, and we'll say create a template. Now, this is going to be a very simple example, but it should get your sort of creative juices flowing so you get an understanding of how easy it is to do these kinds of things. So again, let's scroll through until we find a pre-designed template to start off with. And again, like I say, you don't have to use these. You can go and create your own from scratch or use these as the basis for creating something of your own. So we're going to use this one, which is basically saying, are you old enough to actually view this content? So we'll say insert that. Once that loads all the assets in, we'll then go through and set a few things up. Okay, so there's our pop-up, and you can see we've got two buttons. We've got yes and we've got no. Now, those buttons are going to do certain things, and what we can do with buttons inside Elementor now is we can use those to trigger certain actions regarding to the pop-up or relating to the pop-up. So, for example, if we click on the no button and we come over, you can see all this does is it's a text link, so it'll just do exactly what you'd expect it to. However, if we come down to the dynamic options, you can see if we scroll through, we now have additional options on there. We now have pop-up. So let's take a look at another alternative for that. Let's just say the yes button. So we click on there. You can see that's been set to use the link pop-up. We also then have the little wrench icon. So we click on there and it says, right, okay, what do you want it to do? Well, this button is going to close that pop-up and say, well, you don't want to show it again, or you can disable or enable that, whatever you want. So by clicking that button, you are basically agreeing to whatever that button says, and then you are then going into the page. If you click on no, you'll be taken over to a different link. Like I say, very simplistic example, and you can go much deeper than this, but this is a good example of how you can use these to lock your content away. Okay, so we'll leave those as they are. That's all looking good. What we're going to do is we're going to come into the publish settings. Again, we're going to use the conditions. We're going to say add a new condition. We don't want the entire site. We want this to be only displaying on single post pages. So we can look at the archives, but anyone that then clicks through to go and view a post will have this pop up after a certain period of time. So we say singular, and we'll say all singular. We're not going to worry about filtering this down to posts, pages, whatever we want. We'll leave it to all singular. Triggers, we're going to come in and say on page load, we're going to set this to be
2 seconds. So if you've seen this on newspaper sites, you might find you can scroll to a certain distance, or you try to view some content, and after a short period of time, an overlay will pop up and saying, please subscribe to actually get access to this, and then you have to go through that process. This is a very similar, although simpler, example. So okay, on page load, after 2 seconds, do something. In other words, pop up. We could go to the advanced rules if we want to, and we could say, well, we could hide this for logged in users, whatever we want to do. But this is a really, really simple example. So we set the condition on all of the single pages. We set the trigger to be after 2 seconds. Other than that, we're all good to go. Click on next. Advanced rules, we're going to leave those as they are and say, close that down. So there we go. That's now been saved out and we are good to go. So let's open up a new tab. Let's just jump over to our site. And let's take a look at this in action. So you can see there's our page. Everything is showing exactly you'd expect it to. Let's come through to something like lifestyle. And you can see, we can see all the archive pages. So we can go through and see all those wonderful posts. We say, well, I'm interested in this one. Click on that. We'll then go through to that post and we start to read it. And after 2 seconds, whoa, are you sure you're old enough to view this? If we click on yes, the pop-up will close. If we click on no, it'll open up and take you through, in this example, to Google. If we jump back and we'll do the same thing again, so okay, there you go, it pops back up. We say, are you old enough? Yes, we are. We can now go ahead and read the post. Like I say, this is a very simplistic example of how you can use it, and you could get a lot more creative, but it's a good way of limiting users' access to various content and then specifying they have to do certain actions, like maybe subscribe or something along those lines, before they can then go ahead and see the actual content. So that really is just scratching the surface of the types of things you can achieve by using this new pop-up builder in Elementor Pro.
Well, there we go. I'm going to wrap the video up at this point, but hopefully what it's demonstrated is how powerful this new feature is inside Elementor Pro. It's really easy to work with and has a ton of really cool and interesting ways in which you can integrate it into your website. So I'd recommend jumping in there, taking a look at what you can do, start experimenting and seeing ways you can integrate this into your site design. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. But don't forget to pop into the comment section below and let me know why you didn't enjoy the video. Now, speaking of the comment section, don't forget to leave your feedback on this video and anything else you'd like to see covered in future videos in that comment section below. I'd love to get a conversation started and really share all the different things you can do with these pop-ups and Elementor in general. Well, if you'd like to support the channel, don't forget to use those affiliate links in the description below. Costs you no more money, but does give a small percentage back to the channel, and we are incredibly grateful for all the support you provide us. As always, my name's been Paul C. This has been WPTuts, and until next time, take care.